Lynn Bernstein, a Democrat, who's on our side with this issue. Lynn was observing Wake County and found out that these brand new $500,000 machines that process absentee ballots, they don't do well when the ballots are folded. So Wake County took it upon themselves to redefine the law. They just wrote new law, basically. They said they would vote on approving the ballots in the envelopes. And what you're supposed to do, board member, if you've ever seen one of these board meetings, you know, that's boring. You're sitting there and you're watching these board members, the board member look at an envelope, look it over, then pass it on to the next one. And this guy look it over, and pass it on. And she might look at it and go, hey, the signature's missing. Or not. You know, they just look for the things they look for to make sure everything's as it should be. Then they vote. All of them that look good, they put them in a stack, and they vote, and they agree to approve them. And then they open all the envelopes and run them through the machine. Wake County wasn't doing that. This is in the primary of 2020. They were voting, they were approving them, they were opening the ballots, they were laying them out nice and flat, and they were putting them behind a locked door for 1 week. And then the next meeting, they would run those ballots through. I couldn't believe it when Lynn called me and told me that, but it was in the minutes. It was actually in the minutes that they were doing this. It was illegal, and they got called on it right away because we had an observer on the ground watching who knew the process. Said, you can't do that. That's just in violation of the law. They had redefined the word continuous process to include a week sitting in a cage locked, where only Board of Election employees would go in there, meaning you can trust us. I mean, I hate to be that cynical, but these are people. Did I mention that? These are human beings. And we all know, for all have fallen short of the glory of God. All have sinned. I got that backwards. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So anyway, but the point is, there are no angels. As our system was built for us to keep an eye on each other, when they're pulling chicanery like that, you have no ability, no accountability. So this is the kind of thing you might find in being in learning step 3. Now, item 4, this is where we're going to need huge numbers. And this is a Virginia miracle. I don't know if you heard. Virginia had 45 days of early voting. And this is why we are doing this, is because Virginia, the grassroots in Virginia, set up poll observer training. And the reason was the party wasn't really interested in doing it. And I've had this fight with party chairman all the time. They're going, I don't need observers. I have hard enough time finding greeters to hand out the flyers out in front of my precinct. And you want me to recruit observers? And now we're just saying, don't worry about it. We got it. We'll recruit the observers. Just all I need you to do is sign the list saying they can go in. And that's what they did in Virginia. They had 45 days. They figured by the end of it, they had 4,900 observers trained, and they covered over 90% of the shift time that they needed to cover the elections. When I say shift time, in North Carolina, there's 2,700 precincts. No one told us to do math here, right? There's 2,700 precincts, and there's 3 shifts a day, and 17 or 18 days of early voting, depending on whether they decide to go one extra Sunday or something like that. So Chairman Michael Watley, he said, I think he's right. It's around close to 15,600 4-hour shifts that we need to fill. So our goal is roughly 16,000 shifts. Now, obviously, if you got the energy, you can work 12-hour days during early voting for a week or maybe 2 weeks, and you can make our lives easy. The difference is we will train you on how to do this. And NCGOP is going to run top cover, so some of the abuses that you got in the past, like sit over in that corner and don't move. And if you get out of that chair over there in the corner, I'm kicking you out of here. That's the kind of abuse. Enough about Wake County. I don't know, maybe Wayne County is much nicer. But that's the kind of abuses we were seeing in Forsyth. We were seeing it all over the state. This observers being bullied. A 60-some, mid-60s year old man, which is a lot younger than it used to be. They actually told him at first, put your back against that wall, and if you leave that wall, I'm kicking you out of here. That's like Abu Ghraib torture. Finally, he just said, you know what, forget this. He walked out, got on his phone, and called the attorneys, and they fixed it. But that was one precinct, and what we're going to do is fix it from the top before the election and get things right. And we'll train you in walking in and making sure that the judge understands that you understand what your rights are, what the judge will not do. Because the law only says there's a few things a judge cannot, an observer, a few things an observer cannot do. And yet these judges and these directors of election at the county level come up with new things to restrain you. They just make them up. It's totally illegal, but it's not illegal if you get away with it, right? They don't care. And so we're going to push back, and that's part of the help we're getting from NCGOP, because they have attorneys. They have this thing called lawyers, and they can do that much better than we can. So we really need to stress the observers, and on the 5th of March, that is going to be our primary focus in Sanford. We want to train trainers. Now, if you think you might want to be a trainer, come on. Come on down, talk to Linda, and come on. Because we can use you down there, we'll feed you, and I don't even know if we're charging people. I don't think we are. We might charge you for the food, but maybe not. It might be a free meal. We'll see. I think it probably will be, but I'm not promising that. Anyway, we'll have you there all day, and we're going to run you through some training like you've never seen before, I promise you. It'll be so good, I don't sound like Trump. It'll be the best training in the world. But anyway, it will be good. It'll be entirely different than what you've seen in the past. And that's because we want you to be there and to know your rights, and more importantly, to know what to do when things don't go the way they're supposed to go. Don't be like me. I got so mad, I almost got arrested. Or one other time, I'm not proud of it, but I used my video camera to record the employee who was trying to trick me out of taking a Republican ballot. 2 minutes. It took her 2 minutes to get around to admitting that I could get a Republican ballot. And I got it all on videotape. The sad part was, by doing it on videotape, I committed a Class 2 misdemeanor. That was a mistake. She, on the other hand, committed a Class I felony by taking away my right to vote, by disenfranchising me, by lying about it. And that wasn't the first time she had done that day. We already got reports of her doing it to other people, which is why we're in there. Had I done an audio recording, I could have pressed her and got her prosecuted for felony, but I committed a misdemeanor, and I knew that if I pushed for the prosecution of her felony, they would come back, and I'd probably get in more trouble, because the penalties are so bad that I think a misdemeanor, they can fine you worse than they can for a Class I felony. You got the sentencing guidelines in your head, huh? We caught people voting in multiple states, and Class I felony, first time offender, no jail, 6 months probation, $200 court cost, and they get to vote again. So this is, our laws are really strange in this area. But we need observers. We need observers to know how to do it, know what to do, and know what to do when things go sideways. And they will go sideways for some of you, because they can't help themselves. They just cheat. Okay, 5, this is what y'all were doing. Number 5 is becoming a voter list expert. List name is expert. There should be more in there, because this whole canvassing thing, if you're an expert at looking at the list and knowing what you're looking at, this will help you find people who probably are not there, but then you have to confirm they're not there. You have to either mail them something, or even better, go visit, canvass, knock on the door. If you canvass and knock on the door and get a signed statement from whoever lives in that house, remember that evidence I told you about with the movie deal? With moving the dead voters? What you'll have is people who you've already got the evidence that they do not live there. I know this person doesn't live here. The person who lives there signed this statement that he lived there or she lived there for 5 years. Because Jewel, she lived there a long time, and she knew the people who bought the house that they bought the house from. And they knew these people had never lived in that house, these 2 voters. They knew it. So you get a statement from someone like that telling how long they lived there, saying these people don't live here. Instead of running to the Board of Elections saying, hey, look, you got to take them off your list. Just fold it up, put it in your pocket, and keep it till after the election. And you get a bunch of those. Then you see if they voted. See if you haven't voted in that election. And the law says, depending on the outcome of the election, if the amount of illegal votes exceeds the outcome of the election, that is a valid grounds for a protest. Now, in the Newby case, we protested with 1 in Buncombe County, 1 voter, And the rationale we used was, we don't know how close this contest is going to be. So we're protesting our one voter, and others may protest. We have no idea what the final count is. So we created this uncertainty on the other side. It's like, okay, we're going to declare this game, and they're going to slide across the table another stack of dead voters. They didn't know what we were going to do.
Did they know how many?
We didn't tell them how many we had. They didn't know, but the answer was hundreds. It was, I won't give you the exact number, but it was pretty close. It was hundreds. I'll leave it at that. But the other thing about it is, with these voters, these in the pocket, these are phantom voters. If you canvassed and found they're not there, they can vote. Anybody can vote their name. All they have to do is walk in and vote. And I know we've got voter ID now for November. We do, as things stand today, we have it. And honestly, I think we're going to keep it this time. I wish I could get as excited as you are, but there's every election law has a back door. And the Democrats know the back doors. It's like gun control laws. Every gun control law has a back door. So the bad guy, only the bad guys are going to have a gun. And in election laws, we learned in 2020 that there's, like, who knew that North Carolina law, nobody had ever thought to write a law saying the Board of Elections must verify the signature on the absentee ballot. Did you know there's no law that says that? Every board member always did it. They always looked at the signature on record and compared the signature on the envelope.
Yes.
But there's no law that says you have to do it. So in 2020, the very diabolical election director, Karen Brinson Bell, the trainee of Bartlett, trained Goldsboro native Gary Bartlett, she's a trainee of him, and she put a numbered memo out ordering the county boards not to verify the signatures. Why? Because it's not required in the law. So it's something we always assumed was in there. We're doing that. We're assuming things are in there. And these people who write the laws are figuring out back doors, figuring out what loopholes, and then they spring them on you. And that's what they did. So we have to be wise as serpents in this.
Harmless as doves.
But harmless as doves. Innocent as doves. Okay, so this is what I like your voter list maintenance activities, but I want you to remember two things about it. One is cyclical. There's a cycle of this, and you're not canvassing in the odd years that's much better than canvassing in the even years. Because right now, we'd love for all canvassers to start learning to be observers, because the game is going to be observing. The work you've done, and if you want to keep doing it, nothing wrong with it. But to gather the evidence, I would just say, be careful what you do with it, because we learned the hard way, and I'll save that for Q&A if any of you are still left here. But what you do with that is a lot of trouble, and it may or may not pay off, because when they see you coming, they come up with reasons to reject your work. And it's during a protest, it's a different game, because now you have a candidate who's been cheated. And that's a different dynamic than a bunch of citizens out here saying, hey, we found these people. It's just a lot more powerful. And plus, you can prove that fraudulent votes actually altered an election. And by doing that, we'll get one of our agenda items, which is laws, good reforms based on found, verifiable problems. Not just theoretical. Oh, somebody could do this. No, somebody did do this. Somebody voted for this address. So we've gotten double voters prosecuted. People who voted in Florida and North Carolina, or Florida and North Carolina and Tennessee in one case. But we've lost some too. We had one person who committed impersonation fraud, and the DA wouldn't prosecute him. He didn't like the optics because it was a Democrat. That was a Republican DA too, so. Okay, all right, that's your list maintenance expert. It's only 2 little bullets there, but I had too much words on this page. So that was item 5. Item 6 is machine technologists. There's a lot there. And that Lynn Bernstein I mentioned a minute ago, she's an aerospace engineer who set her career aside to raise her children and took up election machine, I'll invent a word here, nerdity. She became an election machine nerd after 2016 because she was a Democrat. And everyone knows that in 2016, Trump, okay, I'm being totally sarcastic because I really am recording this, They use the machines to change the score. Everyone knows that, right? So the Democrats believed it. Lynn was the honest Democrat who, as things swung the other way, she stayed with election integrity. And the director of Wake County tried to arrest her when she got out of her car to go in and watch how the ballots were being processed on election day night down at the headquarters. He met her in her car with a security guard and his deputy director. Said, if you take one more step toward the building, I'll have you arrested. Lynn's a mom with 2 small children. She should have been, other counties that were letting them go in there and watch, but in Wake County, they wouldn't. I wonder what they were hiding. I wonder, and we heard in Green Bay, they had all these civilian employees that were grant navigators for the Zuckbugs. They were working inside there the night they were handling about all these non-government employees in there helping, put that word in quotes. So we'll never know what happened in Wake County, but we know Lynn almost got arrested for it. That's a forum that you're allowed to watch, but she told us this after the fact. She was scared to death and very upset. Lynn's a machine technologist, and so if you know anybody, they might be Democrats. If you know anybody who cares about machines, you'd be surprised where some of the best ones are universities, colleges, community colleges, people who love that stuff. And they study it, and they've got their own little coven of geeks. They study it. Tap into those people if you can find any, because they're really good people to have on your side. There's things you can do. There's pictures you can take of the tape on the machines. They call it the zero count tape at the beginning of the day, and the close of the precinct tape. There's some really good things on there about the machine that I don't understand it, but I've learned more from what they've told me. But it's very interesting. And then. And number 7, this is perhaps most important in Wayne County. It's 2 things, really. Vulnerable voters are, there's more on here. There's more to say about them is on here, but vulnerable voters, military votes, believe it or not, are vulnerable voters because a duplicitous election office can delay mailing the military ballots in way. We did get the legislature, one of the few legislative victories we've had was we got a law passed that matched the federal law in state law about when they had to mail them. So now if they mail them, if they don't mail them on that time, they've actually broken the state law and they can get in trouble. So this is good and this is something. But if they don't mail them and nobody knows, then you just hear the complaint from the other room. I never got my ballot. Maybe, or I got it so late when I filled it out I couldn't get back in time. That's the kind of thing they do to military voters. And that's just a way. And you don't believe me, but when in Bush War, I got it. I got the actual training guide that Perkins Coy had that showed things to do. They were going over to the military area in Panhandle and looking to throw out as many absentee ballots as they could because they correctly figured that the military was supporting Bush. And they were to throw those ballots out. So this is what they do. So we have to watch that and get smart on it. Now, the nursing homes is another big issue because the Democrats have had a free run in there. Yes.
Sorry, can I interrupt a second? You were talking about the military. What about those votes that come in from overseas from the military?
Yeah, those are the UOCAVA. It just rolls off the tongue. Do I have that word on there? UOCAVA. The uniform, I don't have to get it. I lost it off the strap. Uniform overseas, something. Voting assistant. Those people, it's really creepy because you have these things called, I won't say, they're tracking mailboxes. That's it. And there's a house in Sanford that had a bunch of UOCAVA voters, people who claim the Sanford address. Think of a UPS store where you have like a commercial mailbox where you get a private postal box. These are stores for overseas people. So the store will they'll take the mail, they'll open it, scan it, and then email it to you. And then if you need a hard copy of it, you tell them and they'll send you that. And we found hundreds of voters in one little house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And it turned out they were all legit. They were UOCAVA voters. And it's a really crappy loophole in federal law that allows them, even if they've never lived in Goldsboro, they can register here saying they intend to live here. And they get to vote in every ballot, not just federal, which is what it ought to be. Instead, they get to vote for county commission, they get to vote for bond issues, they can vote for anything they want to that's on the ballot. This is so criminal. This is right in our law. Did I mention they always put a back door in the laws? Yes.
It just seems that, I remember reading that, those ballots don't even come over to the United States.
Well, they come here, but believe it or not, they can come in an email. You can, if you come from the right place and say the right words, they will email who they want, and then a Democrat and Republican are supposed to go over the ballot and make sure the wishes of that voter is reflected on the ballot as they fill it out and check it. That's the policy. But if you're not there to watch, I don't know who does it. It's probably a Democrat and Republican from the board. That's who it should be. And they do it in a public forum. But that's a problem. And I don't like that overseas voter thing. It's something that's in federal law. It's going to be very hard to undo. Now, move on here real quick. The other area is something we've got lots of reports on. Catatonic voters being wheeled in or sitting in a car, and they're clearly not conscious. Now with the increase of curbside, it's very easy to do it, and they just don't even pull them out of the car because it's too embarrassing. We tried to get that fixed and actually got a bill introduced to fix that until the lawyers who work at the legislature pointed out that it violates North Carolina's Constitution, and we'd have to get a constitutional amendment on that. So we're not going to get a constitutional amendment unless somebody is outside filming people coming in that are clearly, we had reports of a bunch of really low-functioning people holding on to one of those ropes like you see in children doing a fire escape at kindergarten, holding on to this rope and being led in to vote. And then we had Friar Tuck. We had a Catholic priest who brought a bunch of people in Stanford and went out to the voting enclosure where all these people were in here. He's talking to them in Spanish and going over, assisting all of them, helping them, having them fill out their ballots. These are things nobody does anything about because the employees, they're kind of locked down on what they can do. And the observers are the only way of shining light on this. I cannot stress the importance of election observers. It is the single most important. And canvassing is right up there with it. What you're doing in canvassing is also important. But those are the two things that any citizen can do. Any private citizen can do those two actions. You don't have to run for office. You don't have to be a board member. You're collecting evidence or preventing crimes. And let me get the last one done, and I'll be done with this. We're also going to offer training that the judges and the employees are welcome to come to, because this is, we want them to be, they get some good, the employees get trained at the county level, but we want them to be paying attention because, well, at our lumber boot camp, or on Saturday, the 5th of March, I'll show you a video clip of the lady in Lindaslaw. She lost her job because she caught somebody voting twice and fully documented it and tried to get it prosecuted. And as a result, they never hired her again in Wayne County. And that was through 2 different directors. So we need the employees to have more, be more beholden to election integrity. We need them to be more beholden to this than they are to their employer, and to be willing to fight for the right thing even when it's hard. So that's why we need these committees. And this is something you do. It's not just a hobby. It's really a lifelong passion, if you will. I mean, it has been for me, except for 2 years of full-time, 3 years of full-time work in the last, since 2011. I've been going with our retirement check to make it happen, and the kindness of strangers for some of the things we've been able to buy at Voter Integrity Project. She raised her hand. I've called you a lot, so let me get started.
The example you just gave about the free state thing, what could a judge have done in that?
Okay, which one of the 3 states?
No, the priest came in.
Oh, the priest.
What could a judge have done at that point?
They could have made him send all of them out except for one and assist that voter and then go out and get the next one. The voter is supposed to affirm that they need an assistance. They're supposed to affirm that to the election officials. None of them do that. In Jay's world, we have them sign a statement saying, I need an assistance. and this person is my assistant. Just like an absentee ballot when they do that. I would, if I were keeping for a day, that's what I would do. But the thing you do, see that what the guy who saw it told me, he was a county commissioner at the time, or else he was the party chair, I'm not sure which. It was Jim Womack you saw. He's heading up. Oh, I didn't even go over all the other people working in this on that diagram I showed you a minute ago. But Jim, if he could have just slowed it down that much, the pastor, the priest, it would take him longer to get these people voted and go back and get some more of them. And that's what he was doing. And it was just clearly a political agenda. And he was quite honest with Jim. He says, I'm going to get as many Democrats voting as I can. And this, it was so wrong. And thankfully he moved on. He probably got promoted, but he moved on. He left Sanford and went on to some other area. So the thing you can do, sometimes just documenting it so accurately that lawmakers will see it as a problem. This is where good observer reports come in. Those guys, they don't see what we see because they go in and vote and leave. And people like you who are there, this is your life, this is your county, and they just come in and get elected and leave. Even party people, a lot of the state and national, they come in and leave. This is your turf, and you need to take ownership of it. This is your electoral process. And we're going to have the electoral process we observe until people like us all get up and take ownership. I'm not saying break the law. I'm saying take the reins. They're yours. And the Democrats figured out a long time ago that they were theirs because we didn't show up. So that's it. I'll go with Q&A from here on. Yes.
What can be done, or what has been done, or what will be done to employers that want their employees, if they don't vote a certain way, they're going to lose their job?
Let's continue courage. I don't know if you heard the question. If employers pressure employees to vote a certain way, we're going to have a tip line. We're going to follow James O'Keefe model and have a tip line. And we'll hopefully get people to call in, or not call in, but email in, and we'll do what we can do to expose them. But ultimately, it's going to take courage. It's going to take whistleblowers. Sir, you have a question?
Yeah, so
No.
with number 3 and number 6, shouldn't we be moving towards almost eliminating those problems? The absentee ballots should only be mailed to people who request them, need them, and sign.
I agree.
The machines, we know that the electronics, scanning, tabulating, and reporting, and so forth, that is a gigantic problem.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question in a long way. There's some great reading if you're into this stuff. This is a new book by Hans Vospakovsky and John Fine called Our Broken Elections, How the Left Changed the Way You Vote. So these laws were written a certain way, and this is a great book. I just started, written by Molly Hemingway. Great book. This is an old book by John Fine called Stealing Elections. It's just early documentation of how these things are done. And this is a book called The Infinite Game. It's not about elections at all. It's about taking the long view of business, the infinite game, instead of finite game. It's a bestseller. The point is, we're going to be able to solve these problems by taking time, gathering evidence. We lost the voter ID in 2013. We lost that at the trial level. Well, we won at the trial level, but we lost an appeal because we really didn't have any evidence that any of these kinds of problems were happening. Actually, we did, and we sat down with Tom Farr and Phil Strapp and showed them our evidence and said, you put this in court, and then put them on the defensive. Because we had evidence of people voting, eyewitnesses, seeing people vote more than once. Again, come on the 5th, and you'll see the videotape of it. Very compelling witnesses. So we, in order to get rid of machines, and what is this? What was the other? Oh, well, the absentee. To change that law, I can hear your argument now. Oh, you just don't like it because your side lost with this. You just don't like it because it makes it easier for poor people to vote. Your side doesn't like it because black people are voting more absentee. Are you a racist? No, they wouldn't do that. They'd say, you're a racist. So we have to come back with facts. We have to come back with evidence. And the evidence is the things we find along the way. This is how we're going to get laws that stick. And in the past, they passed laws that made common sense and tried to undo 50 to 75 years of Democrat, Jim Crow, election law rigging. And they did it in one bill, House Bill 589, back in 2013. And three leftist judges out of Richmond killed it. Said, North Carolina, you can't have voter ID, you're a bunch of racists. Nobody in particular, just all of you in general.
Our constitutional requirement for a voter ID to vote, did that get repealed or?
No, the constitutional amendment is on there. The problem they had was NAACP sued in a novel way, saying, they might win on this, but I don't think they will. They're suing because the law is a really crappy voter ID law. In terms of good voter ID law, there are none. That said, the two best were Georgia and Indiana, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they won easily. North Carolina's law is a lot worse than that. It's a lot worse. However, it is a voter ID law. What I don't like about it is a lot of people go, I don't need to observe elections. We got voter ID now. And what you understand is you only have voter ID if the person sitting at the table checking your ID enforces it. The way our law is currently written, if that one person looks at it and says, okay, this is you, and lets you vote, I can walk in there and say anybody I want to. I can walk in and say, maybe I got the right lapel pin, I got the right employee sitting here, or maybe I've got the right voter guide, and I go, yeah, my name is Tom Harper, and I hand them my driver's license, it says J. Delancy. They look at it, hand it back to me, and say, okay, Mr. Harper, what's your address? And I tell them, I say, okay. Nobody in that room knows that I imitated Tom Harper. Now, if you look at it and say, wait, you're not Tom Harper, it takes 3 people to reject that vote. But to accept it, it takes 1. And I went to everybody I could at the legislature, and David Lewis in particular, he was the guy holding up all the laws. Said, at least let the guy at the ballot table check it too. Have 2 people check it. What are we doing? So it's going to take observers no matter what in order to get these laws changed. Sir?
Can observers be a part of that process?
Can observers be a part of that process? You look at the ID?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure they go well. In sign language, this means no. If you even talk to someone other than the chief judge, they'll kick you out. There are a few things the observer cannot do. 2 of them are you cannot talk to anybody other than the chief judge, unless the chief judge gives you permission. But the chief judge is the sovereign. They can call the sheriff and have you arrested. They're really powerful. The other thing you cannot do is look at anyone's personally identifying information. And they define that under criminal law, General Statute 14, something. And that's things like your driver's license number, social security number. Date of birth is not a PII. It's not considered statutory, but it's under election law. They got date of birth even as considered confidential. So observers can't look at that stuff.
Are these books you have to be updated on the website?
No, they're not. I just thought I'd leave them out here. If you want, I'll put them up on my website, which I don't even have on there. VoterIntegrityProject.com. That's who we are. And that's, but we're part of this coalition. If you can't remember what I just said, look at this handout I gave you. And you got, in the middle, you got Conservative Coalition. That's Jim Womack's organization. And it's Republican and it's conservative. I'll just leave it at that. But we're helping with this organization, and NCGOP is helping. So if you want to remember my website, just VoterIntegrityProject.com, and I'll put those books on there. There's one other book I couldn't find. I think it's in Raleigh at our other office. So I'm getting hooked here. Last question? No. If you don't ask any questions, the speaker will shut up. Any more questions? This is a well-trained audience.
We can talk to him after we get through this business, which won't take long. If you'd like to, he'll still answer some questions. I will notice the first item is our project that we're doing with our audit. So Bob, you'll bring us up to date on that.
Republicans, and to work with that for a while and to make more progress. So if you have any good ideas, if you'd like to join in and help out, and let Linda know, or Betsy, and we'll put you forward. Any
Then
questions?
that was just inactive, people that are listed as inactive.
Yes,
voters.
not every voter,
Not
but
every
those
voter.
who are considered inactive.
Okay, if you have a list currently, each list is 30 people on the list, and I have 23 out. So if you have a list, stop doing all of them and start doing Republicans only. Just stop doing Democrats or unaffiliated. If we get to them, we can do that later. But right now, we want to focus on the Republicans only. And then NC is going to redo the list and make it just Republicans. But you don't have to wait until she gets that done to take a list. If you will take a list and call, and we have the script with the list. So you just have to go with the script. And I'll tell you before you start, there'll be a lot of calls that you won't get anybody there. So 30 people, 30 calls is not much. It doesn't take long to do it. I do want to hear from some of the people that have been calling. Joy, could you tell us something about your experience in calling briefly?
I'll call close to 30. I don't need it, I'm fine. I've called quite a few, and one omission I can just share with someone else, and I shared it with you. I called a lady that was living in Goldsboro, and they had a number, and she answered the number and said that she now lives in Faison, that's Duplin County. And I actually failed to ask her if she had gone to the Board of Education for Wayne County, or excuse me, the Board of Election. So I'm gonna have to follow up with that. That's just one thing that happened that, I'm sure no one else had that problem.
Okay.
But I'm gonna follow up with that.
Okay.
But everything else was smooth. I had a lot of states on my phone that popped up: New York, Florida, South Carolina. And those were the numbers that said no longer in service or cannot complete the call at time. Okay, you're running into those two things.
Okay, so please be sure to tell them to contact the Board of Elections and let them know that you moved. They will give you a change of address form, or you can go online and fill out one to the NCSBE and fill out a form. Okay, somebody else. I think Joy, while she's talking, she had an anomaly that they voted and then they found out that they hadn't voted.
It won't take a minute, I promise you. But I did write it out because I didn't want to sit down and say, oh, I forgot to tell you something. But 2020 election, I called my niece to make sure that her mother was voting. And I said, did you take her? And she did. And she said, well, I did look on the State Board of Elections website and found out that her grandmother had voted. She did everybody in the family like that. But she said, Aunt Joy, you and Uncle Ray are not listed that you voted. And we had just voted a few days at the library, our precinct. And it was a sort of a long story, but very quickly we called the local Board of Election, we called Raleigh, we went to the websites everywhere, and we actually saw that we had not voted when we just voted a few days earlier. Okay, then we went to the Wayne County Board of Elections building, and we stated our concerns, and I hate to be blunt, but that's when the rudeness and literal non-stop talking began. And it was. She would not let us get in a word edgewise. And she said, you did not vote at your precinct. She named it, we got the number, we got the location. She said, there is no record that you voted at any time. She said, we did send out a mail-in ballot to your home address. Never happened. If it did, we would have filmed each other tearing them up. So. But, it's just that kind of situation that happens. We interrupted again, it went on and on and on. And my husband said, please allow me to talk about this situation, allow me to speak, and it wouldn't happen. And she could not even listen to him explain when, where, our location, anything about it. And more interruptions, and we experienced just, when we left, it was total intimidation, is what it was. And on the way out, a gentleman came out from my office in the hallway, near us, and I thought, oh, wow, there's help. I said, could you please help us? He said, would you both please leave in that tone of voice? And we were stunned, we were shocked. But I quickly made this statement. I looked at him and I said, no wonder our country is in the shape it's in. And then we left, and when we left, I told Linda about this, because she was very helpful, by the way. And y'all know, she's very helpful. But as soon as we got to the car, my husband said, call Linda.
Okay, is there somebody else? Nancy, you want to share?
Just the same thing, a lot of I've talked to 3 people that had moved locally, but we're still trying to figure out if you move locally, do you have to go in and change your address and blah, blah, blah. So there's just things that we're not 100% sure about, but a few people I have talked to, let them move locally.
Okay, the other thing we wanted to say is that, we found out we were just the Republicans, and then, there was something else I was going to mention. Oh, we were going to do this until March 1st, and then we were taking all the calls that we have done, everybody's records, and evaluate and decide if we needed to go move forward with this some more, because we've got to go back and visit all of these people that we didn't get in touch with on the phone. So we may do that before we do more calls, just to see how many we're going to be able to contact and really get off the roll by canvassing. Laura, you want to share? Okay. We have 9,000 inactive voters, and of course, when we take the Republicans only, that'll cut that down considerably. And if you will take a list and call the Republicans on it, and you have a script and a list, you'll see Itzy after the meeting, she's got the list and the script. Okay, and I wanted to, that's the main thing we wanted to say tonight. And I want you to know that on February the 21st, we have a GOP meeting at 6 o'clock at the headquarters. Then on February 25th, we're going to have a precinct chair training meeting at 6 p.m. with Jim Womack or Dave Warren. I'm not sure which one's going to do it yet, but there will be a precinct chair. If you are interested at all in being a precinct chair, and we need precinct chairs, but of course you have to live in the precinct that you are the chair, and they already have a chair, then it wouldn't be one available in the precinct. But then on March 12th, we have the GOP convention at the Maxwell Center, and March 15th, we're going to have at 5:30 election integrity again at Victory Baptist Church, and we're going to talk more about the things that we need to do. The people who choose their topic tonight will get some more training on what to do as that person. So that'll be actual training. And then, either the 23rd or the 30th of April, I don't know which it is, but we'll find out soon, will be the district, GOP district convention. You have to go to the county in order to be able to vote there. Then at May 10th, which is an exception, we're going to have the congressional candidates at 6:30. Well, I got 5:30, May 10th for the congressional candidates. And they are as it stands right now, as you know, that filing is not over. So Billy Strickland, Sandy Smith, Sid Sharper, Sandy Robertson, Charles Robertson, and Brad Murphy are all running for what was Butterfield Street. And we don't even know what district it is yet. It was supposed to be District 2, but we shall see. And then for the Senate, we have Kenneth Carter, Ed Budd, Mark Walker, Jennifer Bonworth, Pat McCrory, and I think it's Zach Potter, I'm not sure. And there may be another one, but like I say, they haven't finished the filing yet. So if you would please sign up to be an outside poll observer or sign up to contact inactive voters before you leave. Now, I think it's 3 to 8, so unless you have some more questions about voter integrity and how you can help, we will, if you volunteer for one of these areas, we will help you. We'll have you train. And please go, if you could possibly go to Sanford on March 5th, we are